Hey guys, this is Comic Uno, and today I'm doing Comic Uno's Best Comics of the Week, and this is the show where I review all the comics I've read this week in one show. We go least favorite to best pick of the week and everything in between, and of course at the end of the episode we talk about the viewer's pick of the week from last week, so be sure to leave in the comments below what was your pick of the week for this week. Now, of course, also before I dive into this Monday, I have a Kickstarter for my comic book, They Call Her the Dancer, issue 1, launching. So hopefully you guys could go follow the page. We have about 20 followers left to get to 200. Would love to get to that following count before Monday's launch. So hopefully you guys could go check that out. It's about a young woman who's a dancer / assassin, and when she was little, she witnessed her parents being murdered in front of her and never dealt with that trauma until now. So now let's jump into this week's books. I had about 13 books, which is an average haul for me, the amount of books, which is the average haul. Now, going into number 13, and that was Non-Stop Spider-Man issue 1. I got this one. I'm a huge Spider-Man fan, so I want to try out the different issue 1s for Spider-Man, but also there's a lot of issue 1s that came out, and I'm like, okay, I gotta try at least some of these issue 1s, and maybe some I was kind of more on the fence with, and I'm not a huge action fan, and I know that's weird to say because I read comics, I review comics, I write comics, I love comics, and obviously there's a lot to do with action, but what I mean is that I don't like books that are just action, right? They're just pure action, not a lot of story, which, you know, that's a fine comic, and I think there's some enjoyment to that, but it's just not my style. I'm more of a character-driven reader and a plot-driven reader. So Non-Stop Spider-Man, it does have a plot. There's some heartstrings that are pulled here, but it's exactly what the title says. It is non-stop. It's a very fast-paced book, from the storytelling to the artwork. Just the way the artwork is laid out, it makes you feel like you need to read it really quickly. And you know, it wasn't my vibe. I'm also not a huge fan of the art style either. It's a little blocky for me. So I don't think I'm going to get the next issue. I don't think it gave enough, and I do think it's exactly what they marketed this book to be. It was an action-y, a little bit of heart book, and I just don't know if I need that in my pull list. But if that fits your criteria for comics, I think you'll enjoy it. So giving that one 2 stars, and that is number 13. Now moving on to number 12, another book I kind of got on whim, which is The Artist of the Joker, which we'll be talking about this week as well, came out with Karmen, issue 1. And this is a little bit of a trippy book, but we get to see this girl who likes this guy since their childhood, and the guy is not very loyal, or at least the main character has her suspicions about this guy. And we're getting to see her life throughout the years and her mental state throughout the book. And it gets really trippy, honestly. It wasn't quite my style. I actually enjoyed the artwork probably the most here, which makes sense because it's the artist and who is also the writer for this book. So I think art-wise it was a really unique story, but plot-wise, it didn't really ring me in to want to read more or enjoy the characters. So I'm giving that one 2 stars, and that is number 12. Moving on to number 11, and that is The Immortal Hulk, issue 44? Wow, okay. Yeah, there's been a lot of issues of this book, and I feel like it's kind of lost some steam for me. It's kind of gone a bit repetitive, not a huge amount of movement for the main plot, and we get to see Alpha Flight in this issue, which I'm not a huge fan of Alpha Flight in this book or outside of this book, so it really didn't do it for me. I like the artwork as always. I think it's very dark and twisted, but the story has been really slow for me, and I'm curious to see how this will all wrap up and when exactly this will all wrap up, because I think it is starting to get to the wall at this point, and you know, I think that's what happens when you have such lengthy runs like this. So I'm giving that 2.5 stars, and that is number 11, I think? Now it's number 11. Moving on to number 10, which is another new series that I kind of got on whim here, and that is Proctor Valley Road, issue 1. This is a Boom Studios book, and this is a Grant Morrison book. I don't know if I've ever read an indie Grant Morrison book, so I was like, okay, that's interesting, and also it's like teenage kids mystery type stories. I'm like, all right, that kind of definitely piques my interest and fits the Boom aesthetic that we've definitely seen before, especially with this kind of more cartoonier artwork. And, I think they introduced the characters really well, but none of the characters really called out to me, and that's kind of probably my biggest reason I won't get issue 2. But it was still a well thought out narrative, and I do think it will, I guess, grab people's attention. It just didn't really grab mine. There is a nice mystery that's laid out here, but again, not enough to say I need issue 2, especially with so many issue 1s that came out this month, and obviously so many comics out there. It just didn't really pique my interest on this one, but still a well-written book, and I really like the artwork, honestly, and the aesthetic of it all. I just kind of wish we got a little bit more banter with the characters. They introduced a lot of characters here, and the characters I enjoyed were the 2 cousins, and we get a little interesting intro with them, and I kind of wish it just stuck with them, because I feel like the book would have been stronger just to learn slowly who these characters are. So I'm giving that 3 stars, and that is number 10. All right, moving on to number 9, which is Wonder Woman issue 770, which I got the wraparound cover here. And Wonder Woman, for me, is never a book I tend to stick with, and I think that's going to be continuous here, because this didn't really do it for me. I'm not a huge mythology fan, so delving into Asgard was interesting. I didn't expect it. I will say I really love the artwork for this book. That's really what grabbed me. Wonder Woman has a different look. It's definitely a different vibe for her. It's not just the Earth superhero story. It is digging into the mythology aspect of her character. So that's cool for the fans of Wonder Woman. I think it's interesting to see a different angle. But for me, as someone who's not as connected to Wonder Woman, it really didn't give me enough to want to pick up the next issue. I feel like I've been saying that a lot this episode. We gotta dwindle down that pull list sometimes. But yeah, the artwork was good. It was interesting to see post-Infinite Frontier where her life is going, post-death metal, where her life is going, post-Immortal Wonder Woman. There's been a lot of things going on with Wonder Woman and changing courses for Wonder Woman. So this was an important story. It just didn't do it for me. Just wasn't my style. But I will say, if you're a Thor fan, or if you're a fan of the more Themyscira, and again, more of the Greek mythology aspect of Wonder Woman, you'll probably like this new chapter. So giving that 3 stars, and that is number 9. I promise you that was the last one I won't get the next issue for. Now moving into number 8, which is American Vampire 1976, issue 6. This was definitely picked up a lot towards the end. There's a lot of moving pieces in this issue, so they really try to fit a lot of different character arcs, like Travis and Pearl, and there's a lot going on in this issue, which is why it's a little lower. But the ending's really cool. We get to see, the once villain become a villain again and betray our main characters. So it wasn't a twist where you're like, oh my god, that just happened. But you want to see what happens to your main characters, and they're definitely in a rut by the end of this issue. And the artwork, as always, is really good for this one. And yeah, it was an interesting issue. So giving that 3 stars, and that is number 8. All right, moving on to number 7, which is definitely one of the more anticipated issues of the week, and that is Children of the Atom, issue 1. This has taken a year, I think, for this book to come out. This was supposed to come out a while ago because of COVID, but we finally have it now. One of the new X-Men books, and I enjoyed this. I enjoyed it because it was very different, extremely different. First of all, I love the creative team here. We got Vita Ayala, who is writing the book, and then we have Bernard Chang, who has done Teen Titans. That was the last thing that he did. So we already have kind of the teen vibe going on, and Vita, they just did the Batgirl book, so they definitely know this voice for the series. And again, going back to what I enjoyed was thematically, it's not like the other X-Men books. It's these group of X-Men, or not even X-Men, these mutants that aren't really mutants. Like, they are mutants, but they don't have their powers. They're actually utilizing technology because of, House of M and all this other stuff. They have it in their genes, and they believe they're mutants, but they have nothing to show for it, and they can't go to Krakoa. So I really like that they're outsiders at the point of humans. They're different from them, but they're also outsiders for the X-Men. They're not really the X-Men. They're not really mutants. So it's the outsiders of the outsiders, which is really interesting. I will say this is a little lower. The only reason it is because it takes a little while to get into the characters. There's a lot of characters introduced and a lot of new characters introduced. So it's not like one person. Yes, they're telling the story, but you're not really delving into their life as deeply as they could have in this issue. So that was one of the negatives, but I'm excited to learn more about them as the issues go on, and the theme especially gave me enough to want to get issue 2. The artwork was really good. I'm a huge teen superhero fan, so I'm excited to see this new angle from the X-Men. So giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 8. Alright, moving on to number 6, and that was number 7, Children of the Atom. So this is number 6, and that is The Amazing Spider-Man issue 61. I thought this was a stronger issue than what we've been getting, just because it kind of goes back to some of the simpler stuff of Spider-Man, even though they try to do a lot in this issue. You have Kingpin in this issue, you have the new costume, you have a new job, you have Boomerang. I think there was even more in this issue that I'm forgetting, but there was a lot in this issue. But I like the Boomerang stuff. Oh, we have the pet from like 10 issues ago. So there's a lot of moving parts, but like I said, a lot of grounded moving parts. The Grog has an Instagram. We have Peter, who's working for J. Jonah Jameson again and gets a new suit, even though I don't know if the new suit is really needed or even really helps Peter, but he's getting money for it, and he needs the money because that's Peter's life. And then, we have this kind of background Kingpin story and Grog in danger by the end of the issue. But yeah, it was a better issue than what we've been getting. I enjoyed the lightness of the book. I do think it felt a little cluttered, but it was definitely a better direction for the series. So giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 6. Moving on to number 5, I think this was definitely a surprise one for me, and that is Batman Urban Legends issue 1. I really enjoyed the first 2 stories. So the first story is Jason Todd, Chip Zdarsky, and that was really good. It's obviously Jason and Batman not being friends, because they tend not to be, and Jason trying to find his own path, and he finds this kid whose mother has been taking drugs and was Jokerized, and then the dad was a asshole, and he ends up killing the dad, and it's this kind of reversal of, Jason kind of becoming his own worst enemy, but also, like, becoming Joe Chill in some ways, because you have the alleyway, and then you have him killing the dad and leaving this boy to be an orphan. So what is Jason gonna do there? Artwork was also really intense and dark, and I just really enjoyed seeing a very different side of Batman, but still feeling connected to the Joker War and what James has been doing in the main title. And same thing for the Harley Quinn story. Really heartbreaking story of, Harley and Pam's relationship, their romance together, and them not being together anymore. And I thought it was very poetic and well done, and I miss them, and I'm glad we get a little bit of a spotlight there. Now, shifting into the other 2 stories, I'm not a huge Grifter fan. I don't think it made me a Grifter fan, and I'm also not like a huge Outsiders fan. I also don't think that story made me an Outsiders fan, which is why this is a little lower on the top 5, but overall I love those first 2 stories, which also made this go into the top 5. And what I like about this series, yes, it's an anthology, but it does feel somewhat connected and feels important to the grander scheme of Batman. They're not just one-offs, and that's something I appreciate in an anthology, and why I'm going to get issue 2 for this book. So giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 5. Moving on to another Batman book, and that is number 4, which is The Joker, issue 1. I've been really looking forward to this. I've been loving Tynion's run for Batman, and just, again, how connected everything has been. And I'm a huge Barbara Gordon fan, which makes me a big Jim Gordon fan. So this is pretty much Jim's book, and there is a lot of exposition in this issue. So we get to see, where has Jim been, how does he view evil, and what he wants from his life, really. It's actually a pretty deep issue of, he doesn't have enough money to live at this point and retire, but he really doesn't want to be a police officer anymore, with the way his integrity has been broken down in the past couple of months. And now he meets this woman who's even younger than Barbara, who says, hey, I want to hire you for something. I want you to kill the Joker. And James actually really thinks about it. So it's this cat and mouse game of Jim Gordon versus the Joker, and where the Joker has been post Joker War. And I like the grittiness of the book. I enjoy the narration of it. There's times where it's a little slow, but it's all necessary to build this really interesting character story of, will Jim be a killer? And that was a really interesting story to me. So overall, impressed with this first issue, and glad it's not just a Joker issue. Maybe some people will be disappointed that the Joker's not really in his own first issue, but it's really his looming evil that's a big part of the issue. And I honestly feel like this is going to be a Jim Gordon book more anyways, and that's fine with me, honestly. So giving this one 3.5 stars, and that is number 4. Alright, moving on to number 3, one of my favorite creators, one of my favorite, I guess, franchises, because it's a new book, but Serial issue 2, and it's exactly what the title is. At first when I picked up the first issue, I didn't really connect the dots. This is going to be about a serial killer, and by the end of the issue, I'm like, oh, it's about a serial killer. And that's what happens here, is that Zoe, she's kind of old, even though she looks like a kid. She's like 30-something, and she has this friend whose husband got murdered. And the friend gets murdered too. And I actually like that relationship and that dynamic, that Zoe is actually older than she looks, and she had a friend that understood that. Kind of upset that they killed her off, but it gives Zoe a little bit more motive to capture the serial killer, where we get some glimpses of her as well. Really interesting issue. A lot of good twisted turns. Obviously, I love the black and white. I love Terry Moore's style for this book, and it feels very different from what he's done in the past, even though it's the same universe of Rachel Rising and Strangers in Paradise. But really solid issue, and enjoying this one thus so far. So Serial issue 2 gets 4 stars, and that is number 3. All right, next is Daredevil issue 28. That's my number 2. I've been loving Daredevil, and the emotions in this issue were so good. So with this one, we get to see, again, the part 1 Daredevil, part 2 Elektra, and they're both going through some internal struggles. So Daredevil is stuck in jail. We actually get to see Kirsten, who was from the Mark Waid Daredevil series, which I love that series. I really enjoyed Kirsten's character, so I'm glad we got to see her again. And Daredevil, trying to realize, why am I in jail? Why did I do this? Why am I, giving myself this pressure, this rule for myself? Do I deserve to be here? And everyone kind of keeps questioning that. And we get to see the drama of the story here, where one of these murderers kills himself. And even though he was a bad guy, Matt blames himself, because as Matt Murdock, he was the one who put him in that cell. So that was super interesting. And also, even as Daredevil and as the prisoner, he was too cool for school and says, oh, don't sit with me, and that kind of leads to maybe the suicide. And then on the flip side, we get to see Elektra kind of her kinder side, I guess, where the King in Black stuff is very much still present in this issue, which I appreciate. And we get to see the little kid whose mom died, or I guess teenager, she's not really a little kid, deal with the grief of losing her mom and thinking it's her fault. Again, it kind of all ties into your own worst enemy theme here. And Elektra wants to train her and say, hey, I've lost things too. There's a better way to handle this, and kind of become her own Daredevil in Elektra's special way. She's no Matt Murdock, but she's trying to, be a better person, even if she just kind of diverts a little bit to get there. But the artwork also is super crisp here. So it just fits the tone of this kind of darker, melodramatic series, and in a great way, and that's not a negative. So I really enjoyed this issue. It really delves into the character, did a good job at dealing with the aftermath of King in Black, and not just making it, that event happened. It actually deals with the storylines of Daredevil. So giving that 4 stars, Daredevil issue 28, and that's number 2. Moving on to number 1, which is Mighty Morphin issue 5, and man oh man, this was great. This is an origin story of Matt becoming the Green Ranger, and that's exactly what I wanted in the last issue, but I actually enjoyed the order of this. So we get the reveal of Matt being Green Ranger in the last issue, and now this issue is, well, how did he get here? And character-wise and thematically, it was really interesting, because Matt is the character who was kind of upset that his friends lied that they were Power Rangers, right? He was always to the sideline. He's like, oh, I thought we were buddies. I'm not a Power Ranger, and you didn't even have the decency to tell me. And it kind of ruined his life in some ways. He lost his friends, or at least weren't as close to them, lost his girlfriend. So now we're really seeing, okay, he's his own Power Ranger now. How did he get there? Grace is involved, which is also super interesting because she has her own motives as a Power Ranger. And then by the end, you understand why he revealed himself, because he was tired of secrets. He didn't want to keep a secret. He didn't want to be that Power Ranger. So I love just seeing that he is very different from the other Power Rangers, and it's so concrete to Matt's story. And I just love seeing more of him and just having a whole issue focusing on him. And it was a really great origin story. Also really good artwork. There's some good interactions here as well between him and Billy, him and Kimberly. Really a well-rounded issue, and I can't wait to see more of Matt and what's to come with his character. So I'm giving that 4.5 stars, and that is my number 1 pick. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. This is Comic Uno. In the comments below, let me know your pick of the week, and by the end of the episode next week, we'll reveal the viewer's pick of the week. Now, going into this week's viewer pick of the week, it was Dead Dog's Bite by Dark Horse, and here are some comments about that. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. This is Comic Uno. Definitely follow me on Twitter and Facebook. Go check out my comics. They Call Her the Dancer and Like Father, Like Daughter. And of course, every Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time is Comic Book Weekly, where we discuss our favorite comics and comic book news. And be sure to like this video, comment, and subscribe. It really does help the channel. Thanks, guys. Bye.